A couple of videos ago now, I said some very nice things about this bottle of Bladnoch, and people enjoyed the video and they were kind of expecting a glowing report because I've been banging on about it for so long. And at the end of the video, I also talked a fair bit about the history of the distillery, which is not something that I normally do, and a lot of people thought that was quite an interesting thing for me to do and hoped that I would do it again. What nobody really cottoned on to, I suppose, was that it was sort of a deliberate hint. I've been dropping a couple of clues for a while now that I've got a vintage bottle collection, and I've not been honest about all of the ones that I've got. So today, we're going to be talking about this, which is an 8-year-old Bladnoch from the 70s, I think it is, and it's from a completely different era in terms of ownership, in terms of style, to the modern day Bladnoch. So we're going to have a bit of fun in sort of comparing how yesterday's edition compares to the modern edition. And I think this might actually be one of the ones where I can't ask if it's gotten worse or not necessarily, because I kind of have high hopes for this one. But we'll see. I'm intrigued to see what we get. But there are some immediate differences that we have to note off of this. But before we go any further, I should quickly explain why I'm doing this at all, because surely this is kind of irrelevant, because this is an old edition. And while yes, this is an older whiskey, they are still available out there. A bottle of this at auction will set you back around about £300–350 for an 8-year-old whiskey from the 70s. That's a lot of money to drop down, and if you're getting to that stage where you want to buy stuff to try, or you're in a bar that has an older edition Bladnoch or other spirits available, and you want to know whether it's worth dropping the kind of money that they're going to ask per nip, this could be useful. Or alternatively, it could be kind of like, you know when you watch like Delia Smith videos and you've no intention of cooking, but you just kind of want to watch somebody else cook and live vicariously through them? This could be the whiskey version of that. So a quick comparison to presentation. This is the modern bottling. It's presented at 46.7% ABV and it's non-chill filtered. It doesn't mention anything in there about colouring. I would imagine that they don't colour it because they've taken some pains to try and give an authentic integrity bottling here, and it just wouldn't make much sense for them to add colour in at the last second. This one, again, we have less information about. It's bottled at 40% as opposed to 46.7%. We don't know about the status of chill filtration, we don't know about the status of colouring. There might be some information out there that I've missed, but I couldn't find anything. There's not really much in the way of information for this bottling, which I think says a lot about its status in the past as sort of a under-the-radar distillery, I suppose. If you knew about it, you knew about it, but otherwise. So the format for this video, I'm going to nose both, taste both of them neat, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water and then see what difference, if any, that makes to the two whiskies. And I'm going to be trying to compare them side by side to see what kind of differences have occurred in the time that's elapsed between these two bottlings. So I'm actually going to start with the vintage bottling because I've gotten to know the modern one quite well. There's still like a faint vanilla caramel nose, but there's more of quite a stringent ethanol burn on the nose. There's a little bit like a lemon presence, a sort of like a stewed plums kind of a thing going on. There's more of a semi-ripe fruits thing going on. It's kind of reminding me of slightly underripe bananas, green apples. None of that super heavy vanilla effect is coming through, and I suspect that that's more down to the difference in casks that are being used in the two different bottlings. It's still got quite a creamy mouthfeel, but it's just a little less appealing. There's more of an aggressive heat with this one than there is with this one. I mean, to compare the two, this is much calmer, much more mellow. There's loads of vanilla and caramel and butter, and it's a much less aggressive malt, despite being at a stronger strength than the 40%er. This one's more kind of acidic, green gauges, a little bit bitter. There's a sourness to it as well. It's quite fascinating, actually. They're vastly, vastly different liquids. And it's actually a little bit difficult to pin down sort of a distillery signature from that, because they're just radically different. Alright, so I've tried both neat. So I'm going to add a little drop of water to this one. And I know this one takes water quite well. Okay, so on the nose for the 8-year-old with a bit of water. it's still got a fair bit of punch to it. More of the apple notes are coming through now than anything else. There's something a little bit leathery about it as well, and there's something quite slightly off, sort of like freshly laid tarmac as well. Something, yeah, sort of like a petrol-y, tarmac-y kind of a note in there as well. Yeah, it's very fusile, that's the word I'm looking for. To taste it, it's calmed down a fair bit. There's more of a, there's sort of like an apple crumble kind of a thing going on. There's a bit of like a buttery sweetness going on, but there's still this very astringent stewed fruit element to it. It's quite sharp, it's a little bit bitter. There's a bit of acidity to it as well. Yeah, it's almost like it's struggling to hold up to the water, so it's kind of just getting a bit washed away. It is quite unremarkable. I will say that much. There's not, I can see why if somebody tried that, they'd be like, yeah, take it or leave it. There's nothing that's standing out to me. There's nothing amazing. There's nothing that I'd go and tell my friends about. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I don't know, I think some of the choices that were made with this whiskey have not helped it, particularly the bottling strength. I think it's just, it's not done it any favours. It's a bit washy, it's a bit weak, and the flavours that do come through seem a little imbalanced. I'm going to try the 10-year-old with water. Now that I already know that I like this whiskey, and I already know just from a point of comparison and reference that this is going to be a superior drop, but I hate to waste whiskey, so I'm not going to. Oh yeah, man. It's like settling down to a movie night with a tub of vanilla ice cream in a blanket with a roaring fireplace. There's just something beautifully comforting and luxurious about every experience of the modern 10-year-old. Loads of people always talk about vintage bottlings as if all modern whiskey is shit. It's not the case. You can get vintage bottlings that can't hold a candle up to their modern representatives, and we've got one here. I think it says a lot about the work that Bladnoch are doing. There was a comment that came up when I published my review of the 10-year-old, and it was one person saying that whilst they liked it, they thought that the cask influence was too strong, which to me personally seems a bit of an unusual thing to say about an aged liquid, because surely a lot of the cask maturation is the point of the whiskey. Maybe I'm being stupid here. Obviously, you know, barley makes a big difference to it, the water, the terroir, the terrain, lots of elements like that make a massive difference to the whiskey as well. But to say that there's too much of the cask, I'm not sure if I fully understand it. To my mind, it's almost like saying this gin has too much juniper in it. It's taking a core component, a key element of the liquid, and saying, too far. I suppose you can add too much of a good thing, but I don't agree that the cask hasn't done the whiskey any favours. I think it's done it some fantastic favours, and I think it has made a brilliant liquid as a consequence. That was my side-by-side of two Bladnochs, one from today, one from yesteryear. I'm a little bit surprised by what I found from it, to be honest. Let me know down below. Were you surprised to find that the vintage bottling can't hold up to the model bottling? Because so often people talk about vintage bottlings as if they're all amazing, and well, there's nothing wrong with this. It's not as good as what they're producing today, which I think is a good sign for the distillery. Let me know down below if you've tried any vintage whiskies. Did you get on with them? Did you do a comparison? Loads of people like to try older whiskies and their modern counterparts. Did you have any interesting findings? Did you have a comparison where you found the older liquid wasn't as good as the newer one, or did you have it the other way around, or were they totally different? Let me know down below. Thumb the video if you enjoyed this, and also if you're new here and you enjoyed what you saw, do consider subscribing to the channel. There'll also be links down to my Patreon if you want to help financially support the channel. All contributions are very gratefully received, and if you are a patron of the channel, your name will be scrolling up at the end of the video. For now though, I will say thank you very much for watching, and do join me next time where I'll be drinking something else.